Surveillance has been around for a long time and has been developing slowly with the technology era. But after the 9/11 attacks in 2001, there has been a pivotal shift in public awareness of surveillance cameras. Have you ever felt like you were being watched? What if you lived in a world where nothing was your own except for the few cubic centimetres inside your skull? Tonight, we will be answering the big questions about CCTV surveillance. My name is Cara Scapato, and you are watching a very current affair. In tonight's micro-documentary edition, we will be identifying the true definition of surveillance and surveillance. We will analyse the CCTV coverage in Brisbane, Australia and the world. Why do we have more cameras now compared to prior to 2001? How much do we pay for the price of privacy? We will be looking at some interesting academic articles that have questioned what surveillance is and why we need it. I will be going deep into the concrete jungle of Brisbane City to find out more. So, what is surveillance? What is surveillance? Why do we care about it so much? A famous man in the area of surveillance academia, Steve Mann, described the difference between surveillance and surveillance quite well.
Surveillance is a French word. Sur means from above or over, as in surcharge or surtax, and veiller means to watch. So surveillance means watching from above. The opposite of surveillance, which this must be, because this thing gets along with surveillance as much as matter gets along with antimatter. And so I figure this must be the opposite of surveillance. Well, what's the opposite of oversight? The opposite of oversight is undersight, or in French, surveillance. I sort of thought, well, surveillance, watching from above, they're basically saying, well, we can record you, but you're not allowed to record us. So there's an element of hypocrisy there. So surveillance is the valence of integrity, and surveillance is the valence of hypocrisy.
A working group of students in a media lab at the University of Queensland studied what surveillance looks like in Brisbane, Australia, and globally. There are over 100 cameras in Brisbane City since the first camera being installed in 1993, costing taxpayers $270,000 annually to operate. State laws govern the use of CCTV footage use in Brisbane, and there are varying rules regarding who can access surveillance footage and for how long. Nationally, there are no specific laws relating to the use and operation of CCTV cameras. State and territory laws primarily regulate the installation and use of CCTV cameras. Cameras that are operated by individuals, though, seem to be protected under the Privacy Act 1988. Perth was the first city in Australia to get public surveillance cameras in 1991. Queensland, however, has the most surveillance cameras nationally today. Australia's government guidelines for surveillance cameras are very similar to the United Kingdom, New Zealand, and the United States. The historical origins of CCTV footage globally started in Germany in 1942, set up by Walter Brugge to monitor B-2 rockets. It wasn't until 1949 that the technology was launched on a commercial basis. Today, Beijing has the most amount of surveillance cameras, with a reported 470,000 cameras since the end of 2010. The United Kingdom has the largest networks of surveillance cameras on a whole. 1% of the world's population is represented in the UK, but it has 20% of the world's surveillance cameras. Some have argued that there should be less CCTV cameras generally in the public sphere, and there are varying opinions about whether surveillance cameras discipline the individual. Before learning about surveillance cameras, many students at the University of Queensland stated they felt safe in the presence of CCTV cameras, but after learning about the capabilities of surveillance, many people disagreed that they felt safe. Surveillance cameras have clearly been around for decades, developing slowly with the technology era. However, after the 9/11 attacks in 2001, there has been a pivotal shift in public awareness of surveillance cameras and an exponential growth in data collection. After the 9/11 attacks in the World Trade Center in 2001, the world entered into a new age of government counter-terrorism. There was a new physical and electronic architecture affecting visibility, and an expanded shift in the security paradigm. After 9/11, turning the US into a state of secrecy. Gallison and Minogue suggested the 9/11 attacks highlighted the fragility of privacy. Gallison and Minogue said that the emergence of privacy is a right within American law, which reflects the development of a sense of a private self that needs seclusion and finds violation in the capture and distribution of information without consent. The cult assessed the theatre of security and the object of pure visibility in the surveillance arena. The cult assessed Bentham's panopticon. The panopticon is a hypothetical cylindrical tower individualizing and making visible all the prisoners in the cells, with the center tower fully visible to all without knowing who is inside. The cult described the visibility of the watcher as a trap. He said he should be the object of information, never a subject of communication. Bentham's panopticon laid down the principle that power should be visible and unverifiable, a homogeneous effect of power that is inscrutable and is achieved by being hidden. In contrast, surveillance, as defined by Steve Mann, is verifiable and is able to be scrutinized. Mann had experimented with a webcam headset that recorded and transmitted videos the user saw in an over-the-eye display. During this experiment, Mann changed the subscribed normal behaviour. There was a large amount of hostility and suspicion to his surveillance approach, even though he asserted his right to record people. I did my own little experiment in Brisbane City, filming people going to get their morning coffee. Here is just one example where a customer was tentative to get in line after seeing the camera.
I'm doing a documentary on surveillance. I'm a uni student and I'm trying to see how people react when I film. I've got the approval of the manager.
Nice.
Yeah. If you don't want me to film you.
I'm okay.
Yeah? Okay.
After this, the woman got in line, but was clearly fidgety, knowing I was filming her. The assumed motive for filming is important. I could see people were even jumping out of the way when they saw the camera. People prefer a legitimate source of surveillance, even if they do not know who the legitimate source is, just like in Bentham's panopticon. Kempf and Stahl argued that optical machinery signifies the state's eye and that surveillance cameras are a tool for the state to assert political and social control. They used case studies, including a study of the 9/11 attacks, to show that the security state has massively stepped up in its surveillance capacities. The true power of surveillance is its ability to convincingly announce itself and implement its own structure on the psyche of disciplined populations, which is exactly what the US government tried to achieve after the 9/11 attacks in 2001. Through normalizing and legitimizing power structures like surveillance cameras, repeat performances of visibility make us feel safeguarded by a higher order power, even though we may not know who that power is. The theatre of surveillance is an easy security tool. However, we need to safeguard a zone of individual autonomy. Robert Post said that privacy can be an avenue for dignity and a vehicle for expressing shared norms about self-respect and respect for others, but it can also be a route for freedom and experimentation, including resistance to shared norms. Greenwald has stated that you cannot go anywhere without surveillance today. After the 9/11 attacks, the US government tried to justify mass surveillance to a broader audience by stating that if they could not watch everyone, then they would not be able to distinguish between suspicious and unsuspicious behaviour. There is clearly a tension between security and social liberties. In times of war, like after the 9/11 attacks, people were happy to be watched. But you cannot go anywhere without surveillance now. In the war on terror, everyone is a potential threat. The use of surveillance has increased significantly since 9/11. But in light of this, we still need to safeguard a zone of individual autonomy. We need to protect the boundaries of privacy because it is important in the development of the self, even if we have another siege like 9/11.
I was 5 and